to be joined by Pedro Suarez, who's the Executive Director of the 3rd Avenue Bid, and Javier Medina, who's the Executive Director of the Southern Boulevard Bid. We are here to call upon both the state and the city, both the governor and the mayor, to permanently dismantle every open-air drug market in New York, especially here in the Bronx. Governor Kathy Hochul would never tolerate an open-air drug market outside the governor's mansion. Mayor Eric Adams would never tolerate an open-air drug market outside Gracie Mansion. So why should the people of the Bronx be forced to see drug addicts inject themselves with fentanyl in the presence of children, all in broad daylight? We in the Bronx are entitled to the same public health and the same public safety and the same quality of life as the rest of New York. What we are demanding is not special treatment, but equal treatment. It's not a short-term Band-Aid, but a long-term solution. What we need is not a temporary relocation of drug addicts and drug dealers, but the permanent removal of the open-air drug market itself, which has become a deepening rot at the commercial core of the South Bronx. Nothing remotely compassionate or progressive about allowing those with severe mental illness and chemical addiction to simply languish and die on the streets. That is not compassion. That is cruelty. And it is a crime against the people of New York. And so I'm calling upon the state and the city to stop making excuses and to come together and once and for all break the cycle of open-air drug markets that have been festering too much for too long in the South Bronx and elsewhere in New York. I want to make, on a separate but related matter, I want to make a statement about the tragic stabbing of Caleb Rios. Caleb was an innocent young man who was simply standing on the sidewalk when Waldo Mejia ambushed him and savagely stabbed him in the chest, piercing both his heart and his lung. Caleb instantly collapsed and died within minutes. It has come to light that about a month before the savage stabbing, Waldo Mejia had committed a crime involving the use of a knife, only to be released back onto the streets. Like an innocent 14-year-old was murdered because the state of New York failed him, because the system failed him. New York is the only state in the country that prohibits judges from considering the public safety risk of violent repeat offenders like Waldo Mejia. Mr. Mejia had 4 priors, including burglary, arson, and the possession of a 9mm gun loaded with 9 rounds. Like, every New Yorker has a right to live in a New York where a mother no longer has to bury her child because he was stabbed by a repeat violent offender who should have never been allowed to roam the streets. Instead of sentencing violent criminals, the New York criminal justice system is sentencing innocent New Yorkers to senseless tragedy, to senseless suffering. And so the time has come for the state of New York to end the practice of releasing repeat offenders, empower judges to consider public safety risk, and err on the side of protecting innocent New Yorkers.
Together. Again, my name is Pedro Suarez, Executive Director of the 3rd Avenue Business Improvement District. I want to thank everyone for joining us today in the Bronx co-working space where the bid is located. This issue, for the past year has been something that I've witnessed on a daily basis in terms of the open air drug market. But it is not a new one. It's been around for decades in some way, shape, or form. And the pandemic certainly did not help and exacerbated these issues, and I think wiped a lot of the progress that had been made over the last decade or so. All of you for joining us today. I'm going to hand it off now.
Coming up, what I will touch base on is the level of overdoses and mental health issues that we do have in that plaza. everyone on the team on 3rd Avenue and Southern Boulevard, thank God. Well, first let me introduce myself, Javier Medina, Jay, Executive Director of the Southern Boulevard bid and former Director of Ground Operations for the 3rd Avenue bid. In the 7 years that I've been here, the team has reversed upwards of 220 overdoses, 76 of those I did myself. It's not a small number, it's a very big problem that we have in that problem when it comes to the open air drug market, the overdoses, and the mental health issue, which in my opinion go hand in hand. Pedro and the congressman and everyone here needs to be aware that this is what we're dealing with. People are scared to come out and shop. People don't want to sit in that plaza. And unfortunately, because they feel like it's not their problem, when people overdose, they step right over, which again is a big issue. That is someone's family member. So we do need the resources, we do need the help, and I think this is very important today that we get that out. And I think the congressman and Pedro have done the right thing. They're on the right path to getting these things done, because unfortunately
Calling on the state and the city.
We're calling on a long-term operation. Like, rather than playing a game of whack-a-mole and only temporarily removing these drug markets, there needs to be an ongoing, long-term operation in which the city and the state never take their eye off the ball. It's been done successfully in Queens, in Roosevelt Avenue. We should bring that same commitment, that long-term commitment to the Bronx.
Okay, so this isn't an announcement of a task force. You're
No,
looking
we're
to
calling
create
on the mayor and the governor. There's no commitment. That's the problem. The Bronx, the people of the Bronx are treated like second-class citizens in New York. If the wealthiest communities in New York would never be allowed to have open-air drug markets. And so why should we be treated differently?
And the one.
Avenue, there was a task force put together there to address the open air market that was happening there. But again, as the congressman stated, that commitment cannot come from the bid. We're open, right, to facilitating and even hosting such a task force here and playing our part as we can, but the commitment has to come from the state and city on that sustained effort.
And our message is we refuse to accept what is unacceptable. Like, no one's child should have to see drug addicts injecting themselves with fentanyl. That's harmful to the drug addict, and it's harmful to the community around the open air drug market.
It's actually in them. We did a walkthrough last week with our local council member and city agencies, and literally witnessed someone overdose right in front of us. And through the conversation with the people that individual was with, it became clear that fentanyl was probably in that person's system. And so again, it's becoming much more difficult to even know what it is that people are taking. And every few weeks, it almost feels like there's a new drug or a new concoction out on the street. And so we have to have this long-term commitment to really keep our hand on the pulse of how this problem is evolving week to week, month to month. A lot of the solutions no longer work. I mean, Jay talked about Narcan. Narcan is only responsive to certain types of overdoses, not all. And so even by administering Narcan, you might not be able to resuscitate someone. So that's something that we really need to keep in mind.
This drug crisis in American history, more than 100,000 Americans die every year at the hands of fatal drug overdoses, and places like the Bronx are ground zero. And the Department of Health has actually found not only fentanyl, but also samples of carfentanil in the Bronx. And carfentanil is 100 times more powerful than fentanyl, 5,000 times more powerful than heroin, and 10,000 times more powerful than morphine. So that's the strength of the drugs that we're seeing spreading in the Bronx. Who stabbed 2 people on New Year's Day. Jamar Banks had 54 priors, including an attempted murder, shooting, an assault against a police officer, multiple stabbings, multiple acts of domestic violence, thousands of dollars in theft. Like, the average New Yorker is wondering, how can you assault a police officer only to be released back onto the streets? How can you shoot and attempt to murder someone only to be released back onto the streets? Like, this is the opposite of common sense. And so we have to strike a thoughtful balance between public safety and criminal justice reform. And I want to be clear, there is nothing progressive about leaving the lowest income communities of color disproportionately exposed to violent crime. That's the opposite of progress.
You want to be in everybody's shot? Natalie? You want to be in everybody's shot?
Avoid this body armor, especially on Third Avenue, because of things that have been said, things that have been done. And my job is to make sure that my staff goes. I read the experiments down and then in the Bronx itself. So how does that make any sense?
You want to walk up this street? Yeah, we'll walk up this street, the whole street. You want to talk to businesses? You want businesses to talk to them? There's people right there. Why don't you record it every day? It's like you need to just be out here. And that's the frustration. It's not missions, mission accomplished just because of
All I see here. You see? You see?
What is it? Can you explain it? Can
Yeah, I
you?
have a picture here.
What are you seeing? Explain what you're seeing. Oh, just the amount of, what is it? Is it needles?
Morning. Yeah,
Oh, the
needle.
original one was. Yeah, you see that? That was.
We'll get her to air copy that.
And your family having dinner.
You see that? Every day. You see that? Right there.
And describe to me, what are you seeing? You're seeing, just tell me. Needles.
The crazy people, the knife say, hey, give me money. You know, customer that come inside tell me, they say, yeah, just somebody no wanna come. Either no customer now. Thank you.
What are the signs you look at?
We look for convulsions. We look for dilated pupils. We check pulses to see if they have a low or no pulse. Sometimes we have very low pulse. Very few cases we've had no pulse. I'm happy to say that since when I started, we've had so there was a big joke. We had a saying, nobody dies in my plaza. So in the years that I was here, nobody's died in the plaza. So the guys, like I said, everyone has their specific duties. One's narcanning, one's crowd control, one's calling EMS, directing EMS. So we're a team, and they work very fast. They work very well.
How often are you guys out here?
On 149th Street. It's been ground zero for an open air drug market, and as you can see, there are syringes everywhere because you have drug addicts injecting themselves with fentanyl in broad daylight, in the presence of everyday people, and it's unacceptable.